So my tote bag, each side from the lining and facing to the shell has been separately assembled. So right now I'm going to work on connecting the two. And to do that, I am first going to make sure that each one is inside out, and also all of the seam allowance at the top of each bag is pressed towards the wrong side, so towards all of the raw seam allowance, so that I have a clean edge on the exterior. That'll be facing the outside of the bag, but also the inside of the bag. So all for both of them, the seam allowance is pressed towards the seams, towards the wrong side. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn on my machine. So I'm joining the lining and the shell now. And the purpose of that is that so when I am grabbing things out of my bag, I'm not pulling the lining inside out. So I really want to attach them so that they become one rather than two separate kind of floating pieces. So what I'm going to do is take the bottoms of each bag with the seam allowances facing each other and put the seam allowance together, and I'm just going to tack it, so stitching back and forth a few times, just attaching those two pieces. It's a really simple technique, but it makes perfect sense. So again, attaching the other side, the wrong sides are going together, the base of the bag is completely together. And I'm just stitching in the seam allowance. I'm not stitching past our 1/2 inch seam on either side. I'm just catching like the edge of it. So think about sewing it at 1/4 inch. A quick stitch and back stitch. It really doesn't need to be gone over more than that. So once that is done, I am going to grab the bottom of the bag from the exterior, from the shell side, and go ahead and just pull it over the lining. We're getting very close to finishing our tote bag. You can go inside the lining. So now that I have attached each side, my corners that I sewed look like that, and my bag is fully secured and anchored. I have my straps prepared, and I went about the easiest way to create straps. My length is 26 inches long by 5 inches wide, and so I really cut just a wide strip. I ironed it in half, and then I ironed the seam allowance down at 1/2 inch towards each side facing each other, so that on one side I have a folded edge and I only need one stitch line. I can definitely add a double row stitching so that I have a row of stitching here and a row of stitching here on either side of the strap to keep it visually balanced, but that's really a personal preference. So now I'm going to go ahead and top stitch right here about 1/8 inch away from the edge, catching both pieces so that I am closing up that strap before I insert it in between the two layers of the tote bag. You'll stitch and back stitch at the end of each seam, creating your strap. so now that my two straps are constructed, my threads are trimmed, I am going to go ahead and figure out exactly where I would like them placed in my tote bag. So I'm going to keep this balanced and kind of pick a measurement, and I'm thinking maybe 4 inches away from either side. And again, this is something that you definitely want to test and try out. I'm going to place the strap there. I'm going to go ahead and flip it so that it is not getting twisted as I insert the other side. Make sure my threads are trimmed. And measure 4 inches from the other side. I'm measuring 4 inches from that side seam, just like so. I can put a pin here to mark it, and I know that's where the edge of my strap gets inserted. So just like that. And then it's not twisted, it's gonna lay flat on my shoulder. And I'm just putting the strap in at a 1/2 inch. You can definitely insert it further in. So that's my first strap. I'm going to flip it over and do the exact same process with the other side. So I'm still measuring from the side seam of the tote bag 4 inches. Place a pin. I do want the straps to be even on both sides. So part of all the ironing and pressing down of seam allowance is so that we can have a completely clean finished tote bag. So the final step is actually the easiest. I'm going to take out any unnecessary pins that I have in there currently. So anything that is not holding a strap. You can definitely double check, make sure that your bag is completely fit, but as long as you cut your pattern pieces even, they will really walk together perfectly. Our last step is going to be top stitching around anywhere from an 1/8 of an inch to a 1/4 of an inch, catching both layers. I recommend sewing closer to the edge, so at a 1/4 of an inch. If you want, you can also do some decorative stitching wherever the straps are attached to reinforce the straps, because they will be carrying that weight of the tote bag. So I'm going to go ahead and start my side seams together from the shell as well as the facing, making sure those seams match perfectly, and kind of scooting everything out of my way so that I don't stitch over anything I don't mean to. Begin sewing right there at a 1/4 of an inch. Really careful not to catch the underside. I am removing my pin right before I get to my strap. And I'm going to make sure that my two sides of the tote bag are lining up flush as I sew. If you need to raise your presser foot with your needle inserted in the fabric just to readjust, please do. It's really important. I do all the time. I just do it kind of subconsciously so I don't announce it. I'm taking out my pin again before I get to it, holding that strap level. That last pin. And stitching around, I'm going to secure it with a back stitch. When I pull it loose, my straps are completely secure. I can see my understitching inside the tote bag. I have my 1/4 of an inch stitching holding the top of it together. My bag is secured on the inside at the base of it where I tacked it together, and my tote bag is ready to go.